Every army needs a leader, a commander, someone to shape the soldiers under their command into more than just a rabble of men with weapons. Any farmer or peasant can pick up a blade and swing it at an enemy, but a soldier is a professional. A soldier is trained, disciplined, and shaped into an instrument of war by their comrades and their superiors, and that superior in For Honor is the Centurion. Who is the Centurion? Aside from being the biggest meme in all For Honor, just who is this guy? What's he based on? Well, let's find out. Welcome back to Heroes in History, where we take a look at all of For Honor's heroes and analyze just who they were likely based on in history and whether or not they're represented accurately. Today, we're looking at the Centurion, and fortunately for us, there's no real mystery to who this guy's based on. He's based on the actual Centurions of Rome during the age of classical antiquity, which would be between 8th century BC and the 6th century AD. The Centurion is a unique hero in For Honor, with Zhang Jun being the only exception I can find. No other hero can claim to be a leader of soldiers into battle from a historical context. Sure, they might have led soldiers, but that wasn't necessarily their job description. But to a Centurion, that's exactly their job description. In the Roman army, organization was key. Their ability to organize their units, forces, weapons, and supplies made them a strong force to contend with, especially with the barbaric tribes and peoples near their borders. This military strength allowed Rome to take, control, and hold most of the known world for centuries. The backbone of this, it could be argued, was the Centurion. Within a Roman legion, made up of legionaries, the legionaries would be broken up into units of about 50 or 60 soldiers called centuria, or centuries. These centuries would be commanded by a centurion. In 107 BC, Gaius Marius instituted the Marian Reform, which changed the number of legionaries in a century to around 80. Their symbol was a rod called the vine staff, which a centurion would carry as his symbol of authority and his position. It was largely used as a disciplinary tool to strike soldiers who were disobedient, weak, or cowardly. They were even given permission to use it against Roman citizens if they wished. To put that in perspective, Roman citizens had special rights and privileges that other folks did not. You couldn't even flog or punish or throw a Roman citizen in jail without a trial. That's how well they were protected. A Roman soldier who whipped a Roman citizen could be flogged or tried himself. A Roman centurion, though, had no such qualms. He was allowed to punish Roman citizens if he saw fit. That's how important it was to be a centurion. They were a very high-ranking office. The chain of command for a Roman legion was pretty simple to understand. You got 80 legionaries who make up a century, and a centurion commands a century, and all the soldiers in it are answerable to him. 6 centuries could make up an entire cohort. A cohort is the equivalent of a battalion in modern terms. And different centuries within the cohort have seniority over the other based on position in the cohort and rank. The centurion who commanded the senior or longest lasting century was considered the commanding centurion of the entire cohort. The best centurions could be promoted to what was known as the first cohort, or the Primus Ordinus, which means the first order, as it were. Yeah, insert your Star Wars jokes here. The Primus Ordinus consisted of 10 cohorts, and each was led by a centurion. These centurions were considered the best of the centurion rank, and the top centurion of the whole lot of them, leader of the senior century. So we're talking the top centurion, the leader of the first century within the first cohort. This was known as the Primus Pilus. The Primus Pilus did more than command his cohort, but he also had a staff role and could participate in war council meetings. After all, the centurions were answerable to him. Most centurions didn't outrank each other, but this guy did. He was kind of the chief centurion. Now, of course, even the Primus Pilus had superior officers to answer to within the legion. There was the Leggett, who commanded the entire legion. There was the senior tribune, the second in command of the legion. There was the camp prefect, who oversaw the legion encampments. And then 5 other tribunes who served as senior staff officers to the Leggett, with a rank roughly equivalent to a modern colonel. By that logic, you could think of a centurion as maybe a captain or a major in the army. That being said, becoming a centurion is not an easy task. There were various things necessary to be a centurion. You needed to be at least 30 years of age, had to have some degree of military experience, and be literate. A centurion must know how to read and write, since he might have to be given written orders. There's a quote about the necessary standards expected of a centurion, which reads thus. It comes from the De Re Militari. The centurion in the infantry is chosen for his size, strength, and dexterity in throwing his missile weapons and for his skill in the use of his sword and shield. In short, for his expertness in all this exercise. He is to be vigilant, temperate, active, and readier to execute the orders he receives than to talk, strict in exercising and keeping up proper discipline among his soldiers and obliging them to appear clean and well-dressed and to have their weapons constantly rubbed and bright. You see, to become a centurion, you could either be elected by the legion, chosen by the Roman Senate, or awarded the position by the emperor for merits in battle or valor. This was an important decision to make, as centurions didn't just oversee the legionaries under their command in battle, they were responsible for training them and preparing them for war. A centurion had to inspire the men he commanded. He had to understand war from both a micro level on the soldier basis and a macro level, understanding how best to organize his men and where to send them, and making sure they knew how to fight with the weapons they were given. No matter how senior the centurion was, even the Primus Pilus was still ultimately responsible for their own personal century. So now that I've bored you to tears with all these facts, what can we say about the centurion and for honor in comparison? Well, the default armor isn't very accurate to a centurion. The face mask, for instance, would not be worn by a centurion, and centurions would have sideways facing crests on the heads to mark their rank. But the weapon is accurate. In fact, centurions would carry their gladius on their left side. This was to show their distinction in rank, because unlike the common legionnaire, for whom the gladius was a sidearm and backup weapon, the centurion's primary weapon was the gladius. His backup weapon was a small dagger called a pugio. This was because centurions were not often on the front lines. They could be and were well trained enough to see combat, but many times they were leading with their men or behind them. The centurion in For Honor doesn't carry a classic Roman shield, but I can forgive this because not all centurions might have had that at all times. Besides, it would make the centurion almost untouchable in the game. Also, little fun fact for you, but the very first Gentile to be evangelized to Christianity was a centurion named Cornelius. In the book of Acts, Simon Peter, a Jew and disciple of Jesus, was sent a vision to visit the man named Cornelius. And when Peter went to see him, he found that Cornelius was a Gentile, a non-Jewish person with whom the Jews were not allowed to have contact with. But not only this, he was a centurion, and a well-respected one. Cornelius revealed that he too had been given a vision that he and his family must welcome Peter into their home with open arms and prepare themselves for his message. Thus, Peter shared the message of Christ with them, and Cornelius, along with his family, became the first Gentiles to be evangelized to God by the church. Just a fun little fact I thought I'd share. But with all that said, I think we can safely say this about the centurion. Even if his For Honor counterpart is not quite like him in every regard, be it his armor styles, his lack of a shield, or his lack of a sentry to command, one thing we can definitely say is true, is he still is leaving a huge impact and inspiring everyone around him. No other For Honor character has inspired more memes, jokes, and funny videos than this guy. Though he's without a sentry, we're all captivated and learning from this most incredibile commander. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Take care.